Welcome to Roid Rage episode 16. I'm your host, Matt. Obviously, way better than Chap. Oh, thanks for that, Robyn. That's pretty rude. But awesome. And we're here today with Armand and Robyn talking about landing.
Yeah.
Right? We've done a lot of work going into this on how we actually, and I think a question we probably get asked more often than not is, how do you guys actually land on an asteroid? It's something that may not make a lot of sense right away, but hopefully when we walk you through it, it'll mean a little bit more. So I guess to jump into it, Armand, what does landing actually mean on an asteroid, right? How do we think about it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think there's a few things. First of all, what does it actually look like? Kind of like a controlled crash in many ways. But before we even get there, you have to figure out like...
That wasn't in the design review.
Oh, are you sure? Check your notes again. First of all, you have to figure out like, how do you even get there, right? We talk about getting to the asteroid and then landing on the asteroid. Turns out it's not quite that simple, right?
Well, we should probably go into first, like, one of the things when we talk about the asteroid, what are we constraining the problem to? So asteroids range anywhere from, I guess, massive in size, right? Thousands of kilometers across. I'm sure some scientists will correct me and say I'm wrong because they become planets at some point, but all the way down to little pebbles that float in space. Like, how have we thought about constraining this problem so it's not just ambiguous?
There's a lot more smaller asteroids than there are bigger asteroids. That's just kind of how it shakes out here. So we're looking at, things that are on the order of magnitude of 100 meters, 100 yards in diameter, maybe as small as 30, maybe as large as, a couple hundred, but it sounds big. And, if you're walking, it takes you a little while to get around there, but in the scope of things, it's not that big.
Yeah, these are pretty small objects in space. Robyn, why do we constrain it to, one of the things we have is we don't look at any asteroids more than 400 meters in size. Why do we constrain it on the upper end?
Thrust, man. Thrust. If it's any bigger and it's metallic, then we won't be able to get off of it with our electric propulsion.
Okay. Armand, when it comes to one of these small asteroid bodies, so we're saying anywhere from, 400 to 100 meters in diameter, right? As we look at these objects in space, how do we actually know where we're going? This is pretty small. How do we figure out, first off, like from Earth to asteroid, how do we even get close enough to it?
There are some catalogs out there from JPL, amongst others, with kind of the millions of objects that we've observed here from Earth through various observatories. There's a lot of those, and that's a huge solution space, right, of things we might target. You start constraining things for size. You start constraining things for things that we think are M-types, and that gets a lot smaller. But you still end up with a large catalog, and what that means is that these are things that people have seen once, twice, a few times. Some of them, like some big objects that are of scientific or other interest, get observed a lot, and we know really well where they are. The rest of them, not so much, right? So we partner with various observatories, and we've talked to some of them on this podcast before, to get better updates. So they take telescopes and they point them at the where we think the object is, and we get a rough idea of where that is. But anytime you take a measurement, it has uncertainty with it. And so even if we take a measurement right now and we're launching today, we don't know exactly where it is. And so that's kind of where the challenge comes in. We know an area of space where it's really likely to be.
How accurate do we know it? Like when we get, so let's say, I guess two questions here. How soon before launch do we have to observe it on a ground-based telescope?
Yeah, so before launch, we'd like to have within a month before launch, and that's just to help narrow down our parameters. We can update things during flight as we go, but the later you update your trajectory in space, the more expensive it is, right? So if it's an asteroid that happens to be closer to Earth or is easier to reach, like that's an easier thing to do, to take a late braking turn and correct for it. If it's really out at the edges there and it's going to take us a long time and a lot of propulsion, it's a lot harder to do later in the mission.
So we get an image from the Earth, and I understand this, right? We just point up at the sky, we get a little dot on a pixel, and we assume it's our asteroid because it moves against the star field.
Yep.
How do you actually turn that into a better orbit path?
The answer is filtering, right? So fundamentally, you know what's out there in the solar system. You have the sun, you have the planets affecting how these things move in space, and they move along prescribed paths. So when you get more measurements in, you compare it to where you thought it should be at that time, and then update accordingly based on how accurate you think your measurement actually is, how good your telescope is.
Okay, so we build our spacecraft. We get an update a month before we launch it. We're on our way to the asteroid. You mentioned that we kind of know where it is, but not very well. What are we talking about here? Like, quantify this for me. How well and how close do we need to get to the asteroid? Like, how much air is there in that measurement in terms of meters or kilometers or whatever unit we should use here?
Yeah, sure. So I think like for kind of typical things that we'll target and, have some of our observatories help, our partners help give us updates for, it's on the order of, thousands of kilometers, but not tens of thousands of kilometers of uncertainty there. So that's an area of space that as we approach and we get close, we have to turn on our cameras, turn on our perception system, and start searching through until we pinpoint it exactly where it is.
So you're telling me we're trying
I think
to
that's
find
like the width of Spain.
I think that's like the width of America, right?
No.
How big is, I think America's like 5,000 kilometers across.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He said like 1,000.
Yeah, so it's really...
Is it Spain or America? Who wins between me and Robyn?
I'm a GNC guy, not a geography guy, so I'm going to opt out.
That's a lazy.
But still,
answer.
you're trying to find whatever.
It's really long, but it's really thin. So like think of like a strand of spaghetti. That somewhere in that strand of spaghetti is like a pinpoint.
So like the
asteroid is.
The spaghetti is like 1,000 or 3,000 miles
Yeah.
long. Miles, kilometers,
Whatever.
freedom units.
Yeah.
Long.
Okay, so we don't know left, right really good, but we know up, down really well.
We know up, down really well. And so we can
Gotcha.
kind of just go along that strand of spaghetti until we find the asteroid.
So the first part of actually landing is finding it when we're in space. How far away are we from the asteroid when we do this kind of like spaghetti search?
Yeah, that's a good question. It would help if I had looked at my presentation on this topic before this.
Just make it up.
Yeah, it's like 500 kilometers away.
Okay, so we're 500 kilometers away when we start this.
Yeah.
When we start this search.
And we just start sweeping through. And we're 500 kilometers away for a reason, right? So we have a camera on board. And that means that we see things further away. We have a wider field of view, and we have more time once we see it to start reacting to it. We have an electric propulsion system on board. That means we act slowly. And so the more time we have, the better for
help me understand this in terms of space. Like we're 500,000 kilometers away. Are we racing towards the asteroid? Are we going the same speed as the asteroid? Like how, are we, what is our velocity at that point?
So relative to the asteroid, it's pretty closely matched. So it's on something like, 10, 15 meters per second, 10, 15 yards per second. Sounds fast for you on a, walking or, on a bike, but in terms of space, things in low Earth orbit are going 7 kilometers a second. It's
so we're formation flying like Tom Cruise, the best Tom in Top Gun.
Yeah, absolutely.
This
Sweet.
again?
God, I got it. Okay.
Oh my
cool.
God.
So we find the asteroid against the star field. We know where it's at. We're formation flying with it. How long does it take so we've located, how long does it take to actually get to it now?
Yeah. So once we start that search process, it's about a week. And through that, we can travel through the whole spaghetti strand. And hopefully, on average, it's going to be a lot shorter than a week. But
so it's a week to find it. It's a week to search for it.
It's a week to search for it. We'll slow down and stop relative to it and start beaconing home. Hey, we found it. We found it. We found it.
Okay. So we found it. How long does it take to now? So now we know where it is.
Yeah.
I guess next step is we go to it.
Well, yeah, we start doing whatever science that we can do from a distance at first. You want to start and get as much information to Earth before you start the landing process, because landing means you could crash, you could die.
No crashing.
No crashing.
No crashing.
The best way to guarantee that is to send the data that you have ahead of time.
So I guess, Robyn, on this note, we're 500,000 kilometers away and we're going towards it. At what point do we get science that we can use, and what science are we getting?
We can take, at those kinds of distances, we can take images and we can do different spectrometer measurements. It's really a lot of image-based things. We can't obviously reach out and touch it from that distance. So it'll be much better once we actually get to the asteroid and touch it, and then we can interact with it and know a lot more about it. But at those kinds of distances, we'll be able to figure out, be able to verify how big it is, and is it that's a little far for rotation, but if we have the right kind of asteroid surface, we should be able to figure out if it's a single axis tumbler or single axis spinner or tumbling, and what kind of rotational rates it has, and start getting an understanding of what kind of body it likely is.
Any of that data that if we didn't have before, I know we can get, so we talk about single axis spinning or tumbling specifically. We can try to infer that from a ground-based telescope. Let's say we're wrong.
Yeah.
At what point, Armand, do you come out and say like, hey, actually, we can't land on this. Like, it's impossible. What are kind of the constraints you have to have on those tertiary objectives?
Yeah. So I think I probably wouldn't say it's impossible because we're already there. Some costs, like we're probably going to try to do it regardless, right? Whether I think it's likely to succeed or not, that's a different question. When you have something that's spinning fast, it's hard to land on it, right? You need to match that the ground speed of the spin as you approach it to really get landed on that. Otherwise, you're just going to glance off and get tossed off, right? Like riding a bull. You start adding, tumbling multiple axis spins.
We got to change the name of the mode file. Like, we got to change it from
Please don't. Please just call it landing. I hate this. I hate that you guys want to name everything a name that we don't. When Chris came with the lunch box for his avionics box,
oh man,
I almost rage quit.
Should we tell Matt that was my idea? It was loaf,
whatever it was. With
the slices,
the slice, right? Yeah, that's the cards.
So bad. Just call it. Okay. Regardless, you guys can look. Okay.
It's catchy, so it
Have you noticed that all of our little names are about food? We always end up talking about food in these podcasts, right? Oh, good. We
I'm
sufficiently
changing. So, you've stumbled.
All right,
I'm leaving.
So you're landing. It's tumbling. We'll do our best.
Yeah.
If we
what are you hoping for though? Like what are we hoping it is?
Yeah. So we're hoping for a pretty slow single axis spin, because that allows us to get onto the asteroid a more reliable way. You talk about what direction the spin is. If we can be spinning in such a way that we can always point our solar panels at the sun, that's better.
Are we landing on the poles or the equator?
That's a good question. I'm going to try to land where we can get good observability of the asteroid. So I
from Earth.
Well,
or
yeah,
from
both, right? So if the pole is pointing you away from Earth and you can't get good comms to Earth, then landing's not going to tell us too much, right? Equator's moving the fastest, but it's also kind of the simplest all one direction there.
Well, we also want the asteroid spinning fast enough where any loose remnants on the surface would fly off. So there's like this balance we got to try to find in the middle that's a little bit difficult to figure out. Do you know how fast we can land on an equator speed?
I do not.
Okay. Cool. So we're 500,000 miles away. We get close to it.
Yeah.
Walk us through. So we'll call this landing. I actually think a better word for this is like docking, right? It's a small, we're kind of doing this.
Riding the bull.
Riding the bull. Give us a view of actually, like, paint the picture for me. How slow are we approaching this thing? How do we actually do it? And on top of that, like, once we hit the surface, how do we stay on the surface?
Yeah. So, we've been talking about various speeds that we're going, things in low Earth orbit, 7 kilometers a second, searching for the asteroid 15 meters per second. Like, this starts to get to a very human approachable number, right? Like, we need to be approaching it at under a meter per second. That's, a very comfortable slow walking speed, right? As we approach it. And the reason for that is again, electric propulsion. Our system reacts slowly, and that means that we can't change directions very quickly. So we just got to kind of coast it in there and aim on target, kind of like a dart, and just kind of bring it in. We can move our attitude quickly, move our feet under us to try to reach the surface as we get closer, but we can't move left or right or up or down.
That's because we can turn the spacecraft with reaction wheels, but we can't thrust. Really.
Yeah.
I mean, we can, but it's just so slow. It doesn't.
We can be
matter.
thrusting all the time. It just doesn't matter too much. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
So-
I have to I feel like we're gonna have a disclaimer to all of our podcasts, but use the word DART, and that's the name of a different spacecraft mission.
That is a mission.
So I just got to ask the real question: like, is there any chance that we could hit this target and end up with a bad day? Like send the object somewhere that would be bad?
No.
Okay,
can we
good.
target Earth?
We could target Earth. It wouldn't do much, though.
Why not though? And also, I get asked this question all the time from people like, "Oh, is there danger if you guys totally screw this up? Right? We make a mistake. Like, can we actually endanger our planet?"
Yeah. So the answer is we're targeting asteroids that are small enough, and they're near Earth asteroids, but they're far enough away that they're not coming in close approach to Earth. If they were close approach to Earth, if they're coming really that close that it would matter, we'd probably go up there anyways to try to mine it or try to move it away. But
I like how you added mine to that first. That's straight out of Don't Look Up, right? Like, oh, it's going to hit Earth. Well, let's get rich off it first, and then we'll save the planet. It's always a great way to
we
think
can do
about
both
it.
at the same time. I mean,
Why not, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, good. We're on the same page. Okay, so in reality, when it comes to physics, like we're not changing the orbit of these asteroids, even if we run this thing at 1,000 kilometers an hour.
absolutely, and we're certainly not doing that. So
Gotcha. Okay, so we now are approaching this at less than a meter per second walking speed. We hit the surface. I guess what happens?
we put our solar panels up for a couple reasons. One, just so they don't hit the asteroid as we land. So we face them up, and so they can get some sunlight as we continue to spin around now on the asteroid surface. We start those kind of contact science period of the mission so that we can get a good idea of the actual composition of
Hold
the
on. How do we not just bounce off it?
magnets in the feet.
So we just magnetically stick to this thing.
That's the hope. Magnetic. That's also why we have to go slowly, right? So landing on these things is always a open question of how you do it. People talk about like harpoons. That works well if it's like pretty loose and not very metallic, but if it's actually a metallic asteroid, yeah, we gotta
Yeah,
use
a metallic
magnets.
asteroid, for everybody understanding, is essentially a big ball of iron. There's not much more to it, right? Obviously, there's some metals in it we want to mine,
There's
but it's
some platinum and
some
osmium
other
and
stuff and
rhenium.
nickel and whatever. But okay, so we're
And-
magnetically sticking to it.
We're magnetically sticking to it, and you ask like, what if that doesn't work? Well, then we bounce off. Like we've gone pretty slow. We're not expecting it, but we'll start beaconing to Earth, and we'll be like here in Mission Operations Center, being like, "Oh, hey!" You can see that in the data, right? You can see the spike in the accelerometer as we hit the thing and bounce off. But the goal is to stick and land to it.
Has anybody landed on a metal asteroid before?
I don't think so.
Okay, so how do we know that? I mean, I guess when it comes down to it, Robyn, maybe this is a question for you. How do we know what concentration of iron it is and how magnetic this thing is going to be?
We don't.
So we're just going to go guess.
No, I mean, we're going to look at it from the Earth and do our best job to figure out what it is ahead of time and target asteroids that are or near Earth objects that are give us our best chance. I mean, it's not exactly a guess, but it is an educated calculation for sure. Frankly, there's a lot of science with metallic asteroids. I mean, Al talked about this last time, right? Like we've been using M-type in the podcast, and he schooled us that it's like X, and there's a bunch of subclasses now, and yeah,
There's like a billion different types of asteroids.
anyway, so we'll do our best, but there's a lot of open science on metallic asteroids in the first place.
Talk about like why bother taking images of this thing before we start landing. There aren't a lot of images of these asteroids. We don't
Not
really
up
know what
close,
a lot
yeah,
of them
yeah.
look like up close. So having some nice high resolution images of these things, that'd be awesome.
We might.
We might.
Okay,
It's close.
let me ask you guys this. So famously, OSIRIS-REx went to an asteroid called Bennu, and they thought Bennu was, at least they told us, they thought Bennu was going to be cohesive, right? A solid ball. Yeah. And they get there and it's not. It's essentially a whole bunch of rocks held together by static electricity.
Yeah.
And the nice thing is that the Bennu team had thought through all these contingencies, right? They had this whole list of how they could do it, and they were able to still complete the mission, even though the asteroid itself wasn't what they expected.
Yeah.
What contingencies do we have in place if this doesn't turn out to be as we've predicted, whether it's not metal, whether it's not magnetic, whether it's not magnetic enough? What's our backup plan?
Oh, that's me.
I'm looking at you.
That's where the eye line was going, so I wasn't going to speak.
Yeah. It's like looking around the room. I mean, we will. So let's say we bounce off. There's some. Well, let's actually back up even further. If we're approaching the asteroid and we decide that it is not the kind of asteroid that we thought it was, we'll perform as much science as we can, and we will still try to land. We will target areas that are, more boulder free and give us the best chance of making a clean landing. And if it turns out it's not metallic, we won't stick to it. So we will approach it very slowly and attempt to take some surface information with the instruments that we have. I mean, we're optimized for metallic asteroids. Let's be clear. We're a mining company. We're not a protein, amino acid, prebiotic life in search of what was the solar system made of 4.5 billion years ago company. That's NASA. We do have some other options. If we make that determination far enough ahead, we could spin up our flight science guys and see if there's a different body that we could get to. It depends a lot on which body we went to and how much delta V we spent getting there. So there's a lot of reasons to try to figure that out as early as possible, kind of go down the probability chain.
But essentially, we need to find an M-type asteroid, and if we don't, we don't land. I mean, I think it's really that simple. Like you mentioned, we don't have a backup plan. There is actually no plan B. Plan B is maybe.
Oh, I'm going to try.
We hit it.
I mean,
we could smack into it.
We go for it anyways, right? Because for us as a company, we still learn a lot by going through that operation and trying regardless. And so it's totally worthwhile for us to do that and gain those lessons learned.
I think if we had enough delta V, we'd probably go take a look at a second body. And if we didn't have enough delta V, then I think we would interact with the asteroid directly. And I wish I could give you a better answer than that, but I can't even tell you what day we're launching.
That is one of the problems with the company, right? Like we are beholden to being rideshare. So giving the exact day that we launch, the truth is we actually don't know what day that is. And so it makes even planning for these missions really, really hard.
And you talk about extra delta V. If we do have extra delta V, you start to have to ask the question hey, and how long it's going to take 2-3 years?
Yeah. Well,
right. You have to balance all of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Cool. So we, by the way, from when we first, get to that 500,000 mile away point and we're searching the spaghetti string to when we've landed and successfully magnetically stuck to the asteroid, what's that total time frame looking like?
Yeah. So it's about a month for what we call asteroid, proximity ops there. So kind of a week to find it, a week to kind of sit around and gather information, send it back to Earth, and then, attempt to land and hope we last for at least a week and some margin in there for the unforeseen.
So it's a month because this is our first time.
Yeah.
But as we go back to it, let's say we go back to the same asteroid in a follow-up mission and we go to mine it. How long do you see the landing sequence being, saying we've already been to it before?
We can certainly do that quicker, right? We'll know much better where it is. We'll have the spacecraft there, and we'll have gotten that information on the ground. We'll know much more about its spin rate, et cetera, et cetera. So we can really tighten up that timeline. Get to it, make sure we're good, and then land. In a week or less, probably.
So we get there, Robyn. We're now stuck to the asteroid. Armand's done. Armand's now gone on vacation because he had to sit there for a month to make sure we landed.
Yeah, there's not going to be a lot of sleep in that month.
One day off, maybe after, maybe 12 hours. Yeah. What do we do? Now we're stuck on an asteroid. What is this mission going to do on the asteroid?
Well, we'll continue to take whatever science we can locally there on the asteroid as long as the spacecraft stays on and alive. We'll actually do some other science from the Earth. I mean, now we have an object that we can communicate with the spacecraft, so we can do different ranging and make sure that the orbit is what we think it is. Look how much it's changing. Look if there's any change on any of the spin rates and all that kind of stuff. So we'll continue doing science from Earth, which for us is essentially declaring a safety zone as well. Like, sorry guys, like nobody else can really go to that asteroid and hang out with us because it might interfere with those operations.
Is there any direct science missions on the spacecraft? Direct science payloads, I should say, on the spacecraft?
We're still actually debating any late integration ones. For this spacecraft, we're focusing primarily on the imagers. And in this mission, we could put an XRF on. We're certainly talking about it. There's some other stuff that we could also do. We're not scooping or drilling or anything like that. In this mission, we're not focused on mining. We're really just focused on sampling and seeing what it is. In future missions, we will bring the mining equipment along as well.
Okay. Question for you guys, though. So this one lands. By the way, how long do we expect it to survive once we dock with the asteroid?
Well, it depends how long it takes to get there. We've designed Vestry with a 2-year mission life. I think it'll survive considerably longer than that, as long as it doesn't get eclipsed too much. If we get eclipsed too much and the spacecraft gets cold, and goes through thermal cycling, that'll degrade us quite a bit. We're a deep space spacecraft. We're not a LEO spacecraft, so we're not designed to go in and out of the sun.
And if we're out too far and need to keep the heaters on to keep us alive, that just draws down power.
Okay, so it's really TB. How long? So 2 years. If we only take 9 months to get there with your month landing,
Yep.
so we can be alive realistically on this for 14 months.
Yeah.
As we look at it. Okay. Going forward though, so we've now magnetically stuck to the asteroid. Like in the future, on the next missions, at some point we have to leave. How do we leave?
There are ways with magnets that you can actually shield the magnet so that you basically soft release it. We've had some other crazy ideas, but I mean that's the one that's probably gonna be the primary approach.
So we essentially just turn the
off
magnets
the
off
magnet
and go and
I'm being a little bit careful because I don't want to say turn off the magnet because that implies that the magnet needs power to stay on, and it's a permanent magnet. So it's more like closing a little window that shields the magnetic field, so it
canceling out the fields.
Yeah, keeps you from sticking.
Cool.
And
anything
then you
else
drift,
we should
thrust,
fire
use reaction wheels, do something.
Okay.
I don't know. Something's gonna happen.
Anything else we should know? I mean, this is a pretty detailed landing sequence, right? It's not simple.
No.
As we go through it, I think that's pretty well understood. Like no docking in space is ever simple, right?
It's
Every
gonna
time
be
we've tried
fun.
to do it in human history, it's been hard. Whether it's the space station, whether it's I don't remember what Neil Armstrong famously docked with that went out of control and he saved it on Gemini.
Oh yeah, that thing was crazy.
Right, where the thruster broke.
I mean, to be clear, like we do actually have it easier than some of these other missions. Because we have a small asteroid, it means that
I'm immediately cutting the salary.
That's what I heard too. They're paying too much.
It's easy.
It just has less gravity, which means that as we come close to it, we're not as worried about getting thrown this way or that by its weird lumpy gravitational field, and that's a really challenging problem, but it's one that luckily for our particular use case that we.
So do you think it's harder to land on the asteroid or dock with the asteroid or land on the moon?
I think it's harder to land on the moon. I think it's harder to get to the asteroid. I think it's harder to land on the moon.
Why?
Because it's very fast, the landing sequence on the moon. And soon as something happens, you don't have a lot of time to react or to restart or to recalibrate. Here, we're out there, we're kind of floating low and slow as we do our landing sequence.
So I guess on this, I get you. When you go on the moon, you kind of enter that 30 minutes of the tear in the gravity well where like you're landing and hopefully you land on your feet and upright, which a lot of people have failed at, which is a huge bummer and it sucks. When is the latest we can back off our landing? If we know we're coming in crooked or we're coming in sideways, like what's the latest we can hit the abort button?
Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't run the numbers on that. It fairly close, but again, electric propulsion can only go so quickly, right?
Gotcha. Okay. Anything else we should know about landing, guys? Cool. Then I'm going to jump into mailbag, which
Oh, man.
unlike Chap, so Chap cheats here. He like goes through them and reads them and pre-reads them and cuts out all the bad ones.
Chap cheats a lot.
Chap
I
cheats a
feel like
lot.
we haven't bashed on Chap enough this particular episode.
Well, the best part is we're bashing at the end, so there's probably like 8 people listening. Probably one of them's Rachel, who has to listen for a job. So probably 7, and that's it. So that's all we'll know. Yeah, can we edit in the bashing of Chap to actually the beginning, Rachel? So he gets it at the beginning, please. Thank you. Okay, so from Nicholas, I think this is actually, regarding landing or rendezvousing with an asteroid, since the target is an M-type, any sort of magnets will be used on Vestry. This is why Chap reads them ahead of time, isn't it?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Damn it. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, cool. From Jonas.
Well, that about sums it up.
Yeah, okay. Given that electric propulsion seems essential for long-term asteroid mining, why did you choose chemical propulsion for Odin?
I think you're the only person here when that decision was
I
made.
think I am too, huh?
Yeah, I would like to. I'm not going to answer that.
Here's the honest truth with Odin, why we choose Chemprop. It was all that was available in that short of a time frame. We built the entire Odin spacecraft and shipped it to the Cape in about 8.5 months. And when you have an 8.5 month window going to a lot of EP thrusters, which either weren't operational at the time or weren't available. I mean, when we had looked, Astro was going bankrupt. That wasn't a viable option we felt to go through. You could look at Saffron wasn't online yet. There was quite a few out there that were getting ready to go do it, but didn't have the thrust. Like, we just didn't think anybody could deliver in that tight time frame. Dawn was able to deliver in that tight time frame, and in fact, the vendor we were using before we switched over to build internal was already using that system. So it was a really easy way to take that system over and give us a shot to make it to the asteroid.
And I think EP also drives you into different design considerations. It drives you to a bigger spacecraft with bigger solar arrays, and it's just a more complicated, higher power system.
I mean, that's a good point. Think about it from a solar perspective. Odin had 180 watts of solar. Right. We need 1,200 watts of solar just to turn on the electric propulsion system.
Yep.
So like we would have had to 10x the solar arrays on Odin to even have a shot. And that's what we did for Vestry, sure, but we had the time to go design those and make sure they're correct. We really didn't have the time for Odin, so we had to kind of look. We got what we got, and I think when you're at a small company like this, we could always optimize and choose everything that's best, or we can choose what's available and go take a shot on goal. And I hope we're always able to go take shots and never are too scared to go ahead.
Yeah, and I think it's a totally valid reason to you buy what you can get in the amount of time that's for a given problem. I mean, if the team at the time had selected a kind of propulsion that wouldn't have been available for the launch, you would have had to fly a mass simulator. So I'm not sure how well the company would be doing in that circumstance. So we learned a lot from Odin and the Odin experience, and even if you had picked the best kind of propulsion, if you didn't get to launch, you wouldn't have got any of that. So I don't know.
Yep. Okay, this is from blank, or the name was not copied over.
It's from Jonas. It's like a second question.
Oh, Jonas gets 2 questions.
Nice.
Wow. Okay, Jonas.
Are we
ahead.
going to start charging for questions?
Yes, Jonas, we are going to bill. Can we bill him for this, Rachel? PayPal? Looking ahead, will
New
vehicles
revenue
after
stream.
Vestry differ significantly as well? Or are you moving towards a more standardized design? Greetings from Germany. So it's Jonas from Germany. Cool.
I think that's why Chap reads ahead.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
I would love for us to get to a common bus. I will say Vestry is a whole lot closer getting there, but Vestry's mission is not the full AstroForge mission, so it is unlikely to be the final iteration of the bus.
I think it's pretty close in form factor, though. Hopefully pretty close in size, but we do have to figure out a couple things, right? We have to figure out how to integrate the refinery, and that's not going to be the simplest thing to figure out how to integrate. We have to integrate the storage system.
And we have to come back.
And we got to come back. There's this little thing called a heat shield that's got to go on the top, and that's going to take some time to figure out how to get in there. And we've also just like we talked about, we always learn a lot during the design process, and sometimes you wish you could go all the way back and start over to an extent. In every case, I think that's just how human nature works with engineering.
That's the nice part about kind of our iterative designs and increasing scope of the missions that we have lined up, right? It allows us to learn a little bit more and build a little bit more, and not like, you try to design from a clean sheet for a super, super, super complicated mission. It's going to take you forever.
Yeah,
You can build
$1.3
up
billion.
along the time. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, this is from Symbol Owl. Great name. Has AstroForge taken inspiration from any literature on how to gather materials from asteroids? Including the writings of Eric Drexler, previous companies who have invested in mining technologies but failed, OSIRIS-REx, and if so, what made their approaches worth imitating? Or are you starting from a clean sheet?
I mean, Ice Pirates, The Expanse. I mean, no. Okay. Of course, we're gonna take advantage of all the learning that's been done throughout history, and especially these spacecraft. Some of the ones that were mentioned in the question, like OSIRIS-REx, simply don't apply. Our mission is really different. We're not a touch and go. We're hoping to stay there, planning to stay there. So some of those don't really apply in the same way. Is the short answer.
Yeah, but I agree with you. We'd be idiots not to go look at every other spacecraft mission, which we do all the time, and try to understand what they did well, what they did wrong, and how we can either repeat it or take a risk to not repeat it. I think this goes across the line. We are one of the smallest deep space missions ever done at 200 kilograms, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you guys have noticed because I've seen in the Slack channels all the time, I'm looking at all the power ratios of other spacecraft, Starlink, DART. DART is one of the most power efficient spacecraft ever, but it was a 610 kilogram bus design.
Yeah.
And like we're 200, right? Thermal management's really, really different. All of this stuff we have to think about different. So there's not a lot of things we can pull from easily. I actually think on Armand, on your side, on how we do landing, how we do GNC, that's probably where we can pull the most because math doesn't change at that size, right? Like the algorithm on how you search for something is pretty stable, but the structure does a lot.
Yeah.
And that's where we're going to, that's where we're really pushing the envelope. But again, we have to think differently. We don't have the budget of NASA. I wish we did. It would make my life a lot easier. We don't. So we have to say, where can we cut corners? How can we make it smaller? And what are the risks we're willing to take to make sure that we get this size correct?
I still think that one of the biggest challenges that we have compared to almost every other mission is that we're a rideshare. I mean, we are not predetermining which target we want before the rocket launches.
And I think we're the first mission ever to do that. I'm not sure if there's any other deep space mission that had a non-instantaneous window, or maybe if it wasn't specifically instantaneous, at least knew where they were going.
Yeah.
It's very unique, and it's.
I mean, it makes it fun, but
That's what I was going to say. Like, there's challenges associated with that, 100%, but allows us to be flexible, allows us to be cheaper, and there's a lot of fun problems.
There definitely have been missions that had like extensions and things that decided to go to additional bodies and take advantage of it. But as far as I know, every single mission had a primary body that it was targeting, and then everything after that was an extension.
Yeah, OSIRIS-REx did this classically. They went to Bennu, and then on the way back, they're going to do another flyby of. They changed the name to OSIRIS-APEX, and they're going to do a flyby of Apophis in 2029, which is a great idea of how to change a mission. But for us, realistically, from when we leave Falcon to when we get to the moon, which is how we can really dictate our orbit, we have 2 days to upload a trajectory so we can hit their correct altitude. Like, it's not a lot of time to think about how to switch this. But it does lower our cost by 2 orders of magnitude. And I think those are the kind of trade-offs we're always making as we go through this.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay, since I didn't read those ahead of time, I'm going to read this part ahead of time. It says, Chap. That means I'm Chapman now. Landing might be the punchline of a mission.
Chap's haircut's way better than yours.
But if you mess it up, the joke's on you. Thanks, Armand, for walking us through how AstroForge is designing the hardest step in space. New episodes of Roid Rage drop every Thursday. We'll see you next week. Which,
Chap
by the
does
way,
that
is a lie.
so much
because
better
Chap
than
isn't
you.
even here. So,
Yeah.
I mean, he honestly does. Okay, next week's Chap.